They coming to see me.
They come in to see the Temptations.
Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today, we're looking at incidents that got musicians fired from their bands.
I got lost.
Pete Best, the Beatles. Getting fired from the Beatles just before they blew up on a global scale is one of the toughest hands a musician has ever been dealt.
Did you have any hint that you were going to be leaving the group?
No, that was the amazing thing, Dave. When the incident happened, it just happened completely out the blue.
And it wasn't drugs, violence, or poor behavior that got Pete Best kicked out. No, his main crime was that he simply wasn't good enough on his instrument, the drums. The Beatles themselves made it clear that they needed someone a bit more dynamic behind the kit. Enter a 22-year-old Ringo Starr, who took to the band's sound and image like a fish to water. The band later expressed regret over the way they handled it, choosing to send their manager Brian Epstein to bring the axe down. But no matter what, Best clearly wasn't a good fit.
I'm sorry it didn't work out better for you.
Thank you, Dave.
Pete Best, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir.
Dave Mustain, Metallica. Before he brought metal to new heights as the founder and frontman of Megadeth, Dave Mustain was a core member of Metallica prior to the release of their first studio album. However, some very problematic issues with substances led to friction growing between the band members. This included Mustain getting into a physical fight with singer James Hetfield, electrocuting bassist Ron McGovney after pouring beer on his bass guitar, and a myriad of other incidents. Eventually, Mustain was kicked out of the group, which, according to him, was done out of nowhere, with 0 second chances offered.
I mean, when I would hear Metallica on the radio, I would be like, God, I have to turn this off because I just keep thinking, I f***ed up.
By his own admission, he remained bitter about it for decades, despite the huge success of his later band. Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath. 1970s Black Sabbath were on a run of form that most bands would kill for. Groundbreaking heavy metal albums came flowing one after another, and to this day, most fans would agree that they barely put a foot wrong on those first 6 records. But behind the scenes, singer Ozzy Osbourne's substance use issues were becoming a major problem. Not only was he so out of his mind that he could barely perform, but in the practice room, there were times when he would flat out refuse to even attempt new songs the band put forth.
It was a very sad period. I remember leaving there. I locked myself in a hotel room for three months, just getting smashed out of my brains every day,
According to guitarist Tony Iommi, they were all indulging in substances, but Ozzy was on a different level. And eventually, the decision to fire Osbourne and replace him with the legendary Ronnie James Dio was made. Brian Jones, the Rolling Stones. The era of the Rolling Stones with Brian Jones on guitar was a fruitful period. But as the band grew in popularity and the songwriting duo of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards began to blossom, Jones's own ideas about the group's direction began to take less precedence. Factor in his growing substance use disorder, and the news that Jones was eventually dismissed from the band should come as no surprise.
I always felt very sorry for Brian. He was 2 things. He was not very nice, and he upset people very easily.
But despite their 1969 meeting going smoothly, whatever hopes Jones had for the future were swiftly ended a month later when he drowned in his swimming pool at the age of 27. He was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989, along with the rest of the band.
And to Brian Jones, whose individuality and musicianship often took us off the bluesy course, with some often marvelous results.
David Ruffin, The Temptations. Ego and substance use are a bad mix. And when the Temptations singer David Ruffin finally got his moment to shine with 1965 hit My Girl, it marked a change in the vocal group's dynamic. Ruffin was so convinced of his superiority within the band that he was adamant that they change their name to David Ruffin and the Temptations. Several instances of him being late for his own shows were a problem, but the last straw came when Ruffin missed a gig in Cleveland to go see his new girlfriend, Barbara Gail Martin, perform. He was dismissed a few days later.
Y'all ain't nothing without me. I made your asses. You can't fire me.
Though he did try to rejoin, forcing his way on stage several times whenever they sang his signature song. A return never materialized. He passed away in 1991 at age 50.
But there were some differences business-wise, and at that time, things just could not be smoothed out.
David Elliffson, Megadeth. 2 stints during especially productive periods for Megadeth were enough to earn David Elliffson his own personal slice of heavy metal history. But after initially spending 19 years in the band until their 2002 breakup, in 2021, his second run as bassist came to a more permanent end. Allegations of misconduct with an underage fan over a video call by the then 56-year-old Elliffson were enough for the group to cut ties with him.
We're informing our fans that David Elliffson is no longer playing with Megadeth, and that we are officially parting ways with him. We do not take this decision lightly.
Elliffson himself denied any wrongdoing, and the fan herself claimed that she was not actually underage. But regardless of their defense, lead singer Dave Mustain had already made moves to replace him with former bassist James Lomenzo, sealing Elliffson's fate. Steven Adler, Guns N' Roses. As their drummer during the peak commercial period for Guns N' Roses, Steven Adler's footprint on the band's signature sound cannot be understated. But like so many in the industry, substance use disorder took control of his life until it had deprived him of the very thing he helped build.
That's just what it is. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Not only was the group's heavily indulgent lifestyle causing some major tensions between members, but in the case of Adler, it was affecting his playing so badly that entire days of studio recording were being delayed. In 1990, it all eventually became too much, and Adler was shown the door.
The band had the absolute right to withdraw from a partnership relationship with Steven Adler, and they simply exercised that right.
He did eventually return to the stage with GNR in 2016 for a brief guest spot, but that aside, his run as their drummer ended decades ago. Don Felder, Eagles. To say that the Eagles have had more than a few interpersonal problems would be putting it lightly.
Welcome to the Hotel California.
Once in 1980, lead guitarist Don Felder and frontman Glenn Frey very nearly came to blows on stage, and the band predictably broke up shortly after. But in 2001, disputes between members got to a totally different level when Felder was fired for his constant arguments with the other members. According to Felder, over the years, Frey and Don Henley had been attempting to cut him out of profits while taking home a larger slice of the pie for themselves. In his eyes, the rifts between the group were being used as an excuse to cut him out entirely.
Do you say to yourself, might have, could have, should have done it a different way?
You know, I don't have any regrets about the way I felt about it at the time. I think that's a mistake to look back and regret your own decisions, you know.
The original lineup never performed together again.
What a nice surprise, what a nice surprise. Bring your alibis.
Nick Oliveri, Queens of the Stone Age. Nick Oliveri's time in Queens of the Stone Age is fondly remembered by fans who loved his bass and vocal work on seminal albums, such as Songs for the Deaf and Rated R.
We get some rules to follow.
But his time with the band would be cut short when he was fired by frontman Josh Homme in 2004. The reason for his dismissal? Take your pick.
He finally felt like, God, I'm the front man in this band. And once he felt like he could be the front man, he didn't need Mark or me or around anymore, which is how I really honestly feel is what went down.
Supposedly, Halmy had grown annoyed with Oliveri's aggressive attitude towards the band's fans, and an argument between the two when the bassist was drunk caused major issues. Most notably, however, allegations of abuse from his girlfriend led Halmy to want to put serious distance between himself and his longtime collaborator. He has played with them sporadically since, but his days as a core member are clearly over.
But no one knows.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Lindsey Buckingham, Fleetwood Mac, fired for snarky behavior at Music Care's Person of the Year gala.
Do you have any knowledge of how the decision process went down with the band?
None.
Tony McCarroll, Oasis, fired for an apparent personality clash with brothers Noel and Liam Gallagher.
In all honesty, I've got to be proud and happy that I was part of something so big.
Lemmy Hawkwind, fired following a 1970 drug arrest before eventually starting his own band, Motorhead.
I wouldn't have traded it for any other band, ever, In fact, I would have probably been in that band right now if they hadn't fired me.
Kim Shattuck, Pixies, fired for onstage diving, as it wasn't the type of vibe the band wanted to give off.
Here comes your man. Here comes your man.
Dave Abruzzese, Pearl Jam, fired for having way too much energy off stage, which clashed with the more reserved members.
I did feel underappreciated. I did feel, like there was a dynamic that was wrong, elements of the band, in that, I was the only one that celebrated our success.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Dave Glover, Slade. If you're looking for the strangest reason a musician has ever been fired from their band, look no further. Dave Glover was by no means a founding member of the iconic British rock band Slade, but his 3-year run as bassist came to a sudden end in 2003, when it emerged that he was engaged to imprisoned serial killer Rosemary West.
Rosemary West, on trial at Winchester, accused of 10 murders, today became the first witness called in her own defense.
The pair had seemingly become pen pals and exchanged numerous love letters. Once West publicly announced the marriage, Slade founder Dave Hill immediately fired Glover. If you're wondering, the marriage was eventually called off, and Glover went on to deny that things were ever romantic between them. Which band do you think regrets firing one of their members the most or the least? Let us know in the comments below.
I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven or this could